Today's topic is the thing that is in all of our lives right now, and that is what to say when the coronavirus comes up on our conversations. What to say to our customers, what to say to our prospects. How do we handle that very sensitive situation, but not let the business objectives go right out the door? Because the businesses who are handling this well and finding ways to adapt and give something to their customers and to the world will be the ones that come out of this successfully. And the ones that struggle to do that might not come out of it so well. So we're going to talk about what you can say when the coronavirus comes up on your calls. It's a pretty simple three-part approach. And I'm going to share that approach with you guys now. So there's kind of two things to think about first, and that is, how do you balance the humanness of this situation, the need to empathize, and the fact that everybody in the entire world is going through a crisis together, with doing your part to try to accomplish the business objectives that you're on the phone to accomplish. So the first rule in the three rules of dealing with the coronavirus here, rule number one is the second that the coronavirus is mentioned, go human. And what I mean by that is take a second and throw your business objectives totally out the window. Don't even think about booking the meeting. Don't think about closing the deal. Don't think about like getting that playbook built out. Just throw it out the window. And for a second, it's just like, hey, we're all people. So what does that look like practically? It's two questions, or rather one question and one subject to bring it with your customers. The first question is asking them what it's like for them. You focus. How is your customer doing? How is the prospect doing? So practically, coronavirus gets mentioned on the call. You might say, man, this is really rough, isn't it? For you guys, are you guys in quarantine? Are you in lockdown? What's it like over there? Right? And notice that I didn't have the happy salesperson voice. Man, it sure is rough, isn't it? Man, how's it like for you guys? Like, no. Sink into it. Like, be in that topic and fully recognize with your tone and your language, like how freaking devastating this is for the entire world. So, in the Go Human approach, part one is going to be ask them about them. How's the quarantine? Do you guys have a stay-at-home order? Are you staying home with kids? Have you gone remote yet? Something that's like genuine curiosity about like, hey, so what's going on with you? And you can do this for people you've never met before. You can. There's a natural bond that we all have from going through the situation together, and people recognize that. So try it. Hey, geez, man, this is really crazy. How are things for you guys? Are you on quarantine yet? So that's number one. And the second thing is share a small, quick, personal anecdote about you. So you guys know that we usually side with not mentioning yourself, right? It's not about you. Don't talk about you and all the things that you have going on in your life. This is actually an exception. This is a spot where you can humanize a situation, and the fact that you're in the same boat by saying something like, hey, yeah, I totally get it. For me personally, we're all remote. And I actually saw that Travis in the SDR playbook, you built that out as well. Empathize and then talk about how we're remote too. But take a second and describe it, So for the two new SDRs, you might say, hey, it is crazy. This is actually my second week at Balto, and I was onboarded almost 100% remotely last week. Isn't that wild? Like, what crazy times are this? So offer a little bit of detail, because a lot of times your prospect will say, that is so crazy. I can't believe you had to deal with that, right? And I'll give you an example. I was talking to family just the other day, and they're in Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh is going on like nothing's happening. They said, oh, earlier this week we were at a concert, And then before that, we were at a baseball game. And I was like, how are there even baseball games being played? I didn't know any baseball game is possibly being played right now, but apparently it was. So like people are interested in the different situations that folks are in right now. And if you share just a little bit of detail about your situation, people understand it. So rule number one, the second the coronavirus comes up, put your business objectives completely to the side and be a human. Number two is going to be, then you're going to have to pivot. So you guys had a quick coronavirus conversation. You asked them about them and how they're doing and how they're handling it. You gave a quick note about you. And then you're going to have to transition, because otherwise you're going to be stuck on the coronavirus objection, and that's not going to go very far. So what does the pivot look like? It should be explicit. It should be you essentially mentioning, we're going to pivot now. One of the phrases I might recommend is putting everything with the coronavirus aside for just a second, XYZ, whatever you're going to say. Putting everything with the coronavirus aside for just a second, with your guys' coaching right now and how you're managing the team, what does that look like? So that leaves two options. There's two things that can happen from that. Either one, they agree with you and they put the coronavirus aside for a second, and you both have like mutually decided you're going to shelf that conversation. Or two, they don't, and now you're in a coronavirus rebuttal battle, which is a very difficult place to be, but no worse than you were before a minute ago. So those are your two options. You say, hey, we took a minute to empathize. We're on the same page. This is an incredibly crappy situation for everyone. Putting the coronavirus aside for a second, if I could ask about your coaching and how you guys are managing that remote team, what sort of data do you look at to help them improve their performance? That's the sort of thing you can do to bring it from human to the business objective. So one, we're instantly going human at the beginning. Two, we're going to put a pivot to make sure we bring up the business objective. Number three is going to be injecting trust and credibility. The way that you're going to do this is by providing third-party support for the fact that it really does make sense to meet, or whatever your proposition is, your recommendation is, it really is a reasonable thing to do. So let's say that you put the coronavirus aside for a second, you're asking some discovery questions, and you're about to go for the ask. That's the sort of moment where you say, a lot of companies that we're talking to don't even want to think about a new investment right now. But some companies feel like there's a really big opportunity to get their coaching right now because they have to. It's a necessity. Your folks are at a distance. There's nothing else you can do. So with all that said, your ask, right? But put some credibility there. The last thing you want to do is look like you have no clue what's going on, or you haven't really fathomed the craziness of all this, or that you're trying to brush over it and you did your empathy and you're now moving on, right? Bring it back. Acknowledge, hey, a lot of companies aren't meeting right now, but also a lot are. And they're investing in technology and they're trying to make their remote force as effective as possible. So with that said, even though your schedule is probably pretty crazy, what does your availability look like? Let's see, I have today I could do today after 2, or I could do tomorrow before 11. That's Pacific time. Either of those work for you? So that's the third principle. The third principle in dealing with this is give a little bit of credibility, inject some credibility in the conversation, and do that by being real and recognizing that, hey, a lot of people aren't meeting, but some are. And you might be one of the people who are. That's the truth. That's 100% the truth. One of our customers said that their business has not missed a beat. There's another customer, I'm trying to remember who it is, and they said that they had I don't remember who it was. They said they had the highest volume of appointments set last week that they've ever had. Crazy that there can be such a divergence of outcomes right now. But that's something to consider, is that a lot of people aren't looking at technology. A lot of people aren't trying to do a better job with coaching and remote management, but some are. And the people you're talking to might be those people. Folks, we only want to employ this strategy when the coronavirus actually comes up as something that is stopping the conversation, right? The recommendation here is not that we should start every call with coronavirus rapport. That is not it. The recommendation is that if someone says, honestly, man, now's not a good time. I have all this coronavirus stuff going on. It's like chaos out there. That is when you jump in. So remember that you should feel proud and confident to do business as usual. Do business as usual until you have a reason not to. So the last thing you need to do is, have an intro that you're afraid of delivering, or a pain question that you're not going to ask fully because you want to hold back. Do not hold back. But the second that you hear the coronavirus come up, that should trigger a response for you where you say, got it. Put business aside for a second, be a person, pivot back to business, follow up with credibility when you go for your ask. But this is not saying, everyone start your calls with coronavirus rapport and jump right into it at the slightest hint that they mention the coronavirus, because that's not what this is about. Thank you all for joining the sales training. This was fun. Keep your heads up. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk next week.